Dr. Martin Luther King.
Can we get a statement, please?
Those that have gone before us say no more.
Uncle Marty!
Ain't you supposed to be on a diet?
The tide is turning away from King.
Hey, watch your mouth.
People say they're gonna kill our children.
I can't go on forever like this.
You have to do this.
If you march those people, it's gonna be open season.
Our freedom will soon be upon us.
Hello, I'm the Universal Critic. I talk about whatever I want, whenever I want. My Oscar season reviews continue with today's film, Selma. In 1965, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., played by David Oyelowo, struggles to gain traction for the civil rights movement. He faces many obstacles, namely President Johnson, played by Tom Wilkinson, and Alabama Governor George Wallace, played by Tim Roth, who both put a considerable strain on King's nonviolent tactics. On top of all the external pressure, King must also struggle to save his marriage to his wife, Coretta, played by Carmen Ejogo. First and foremost, I would like to dismiss all the criticisms of this film regarding the idea of white guilt. I've always hated that phrase, mostly because it's usually promoted by cynical white people, and I can say that because I am a cynical white person, who think that chronicling past injustice somehow means that people today are to blame. The truth of it is that racism is still very real in our world, and the hatred that was virulent in the past still informs and influences discrimination today. And if you don't think that's true, you just don't know the world we're living in. Oyelowo and Ejogo are definitely the standouts among the main cast. This film is a very humanizing portrayal of Dr. King, which is exactly what I was hoping for. Too often, biopics like this only touch upon a historical figure's reputation, not their personality or character. And we don't need Hollywood to show us that part. We have history books and documentaries for that. Our leads masterfully overcome that all-too-common trap, thankfully. Oyelowo captures the charismatic speech master that we all see Dr. King as nowadays, but the film isn't afraid to spotlight his faults either. Specifically, his stubbornness and especially his infidelity. Not to mention the fact that he is still very scared of the tremendous weight he is carrying on his shoulders. The same goes for Ejogo, who loves her husband very much, despite his faults, but she never takes said faults lying down. Her biggest challenge is by far being separated from her husband as he is in such terrible danger, and her main arc is not distancing herself from his noble cause out of fear. There are some problems with this film in terms of the history, namely concerning LBJ. Wilkinson gives a solid performance, but Johnson is written as someone who seems to be oddly concerned with holding Dr. King's movement back, which from what I know about this era was not the case. Not to say he's the villain, he's more of a pragmatist with the pressures of running a nation on his shoulders more than anything else. But the way he butts heads with Dr. King, he just seems too needlessly antagonizing a lot of the time. Despite that, the depiction of the 1960s South, especially the discrimination, is pretty spot on. This is a time and place in which race hatred permeated everyday life, on a much grander scale than it does now. Governor Wallace, who is definitely the villain of this film, encapsulates how racists think. They don't just say they hate a certain color, they always try and justify it by shifting the issue. Wallace says he's fighting big government, not desegregation. He's not afraid of change, he's protecting tradition. And when Johnson calls him out on this, he always tries to shift the blame, saying that it's not his responsibility, it's someone else's. That's how people like him think, that there's always someone else to blame and hate besides yourself. I think the best example is when Annie Lee Cooper, played by Oprah Winfrey, tries to register to vote only to be blocked by an unfair literacy test. She tries to tell the clerk that her paperwork is right this time around, only for him to respond, "It's right when I say it's right." A whole system of oppression is built around a bunch of snobby bureaucrats with a superiority complex. Really think about that for a while. Overall, I give Selma a high big screen rating. It's a powerful and provocative look at one of the most influential men in American history. Funny thing though, I had the day off of school today for MLK Day, and because of that, I missed my black cinema class.
Now that is irony.
I'm the Universal Critic. I talk about whatever I want, whenever I want. Goodbye.